Alright, so that was my best Thelonious Monk impression, and why was I doing that? Well, because today's video is all about how to sound like the great Thelonious Monk. Now, Monk is a really particularly interesting jazz pianist to me because, in my opinion, he may be one of the few musicians we discuss here on this channel who was not just a highly influential jazz piano player, but actually an incredibly influential jazz musician, period. He really introduced and changed so much when it comes to jazz harmony, even melodic choices, and also jazz composition. So we are going to dive into Monk's style, what made him so unique, and what we can actually take today and apply to our playing to make studying him as useful and applicable as possible. But first, if you're new to my channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell for notifications because I have videos just like this rolling out every single week, and there is absolutely must-know, incredibly important information if you want to be a better piano player. So hit that subscribe button. I just want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Straight Ahead Samples. So this is a sample company specializing in jazz, and that's something that I'm always on the lookout for because jazz samples that really work and sound legitimate are pretty tough to come by, especially when it comes to making horn lines sound real. So that's why I was really excited when Straight Ahead Samples reached out to me and showed me their technology. They've actually got this really amazing algorithm that will take a line that you play in, it'll take the MIDI and actually analyze it and then automatically add in all of that articulation that samples are usually missing. So I think it's really, really cool and totally worth checking these out. The best part is they are currently giving away the Real Piano, which is the piano plugin that I'm using throughout this video, completely for free. But yeah, so you can really mess around with the settings here and get different variations of the sound. It really just fits really nicely with some of their other libraries, which you can see here on the left. So again, if you're interested, this library is completely free. Click the download link in the description to learn more about that. All right, let's dive into Thelonious Monk's playing. So I actually think that Thelonious Monk's playing can kind of be summed up in literally just one or two words. In terms of its character and the actions he takes while he's playing, I think we could sum it up with just the word surprise or surprising. And in terms of his improvisational and even harmonic sense, I think we could just sum it up with the word tritone. Now, of course, that is hugely oversimplistic, but remember, this video is about making his playing accessible and understanding it so that we can apply it to our own playing. It's not about literally learning every single nitty-gritty detail of how he plays and spending hours analyzing it so that we can play exactly like he plays. So in this video, we're going to talk about some of the more conceptual elements of his playing, but I'm also going to be showing you some really easy to apply, awesome licks and runs that you can use straight away. So be sure to stick around because some of those things are coming up a bit later in the video. So let's start out kind of broadly here and talk about that word I used, tritone. Now there's a very good chance that if you're watching my channel, you already know what the interval of a tritone is, but just in case you don't, let's take a look at the key of F here, which is what my intro was in. I was playing an F blues. Now in the key of F, the tritone away would be B. So if F is our root, we go up one whole step, another whole step, and a third whole step, and we arrive at B, the tritone. The thing about the tritone is that it splits the octave exactly evenly. So we have the same amount of space between the bottom F and the B and the top F and the B. So just to start out, literally, I would encourage you to try just arpeggiating that simple interval. So 1, sharp 4, which is the tritone, right? 1, sharp 4, 1, sharp 4. Let's see if we can do that same thing on the B flat 7 chord. So what I'm doing here in terms of the fingers, I'm doing 3, 1, 3, 1. I find that's the easiest for me, but if you can think of another fingering for that, definitely let me know in the comments. Now, something else Monk will do a lot of the time is he will cluster notes together. But I'm not talking about a complex clustered voicing. I'm talking in his improvisation, he will actually add in these little tiny two-note clusters. So for example, instead of doing this tritone arpeggio cleanly like that, he might actually go, right? And actually get this little two-note cluster of the 3 and the sharp 4. So I'm actually just using my thumb to hit both of those. And that kind of haphazard fingering is actually something you'll see from Monk as well if you watch some videos of him, which I highly recommend you do, because in the age of YouTube, we have got lots of those to go around, which is awesome. So that tritone interval automatically gives us some really, really interesting sounds. And it wasn't something that was used as such an integral part of improvisation and composition until Monk really started to essentially make it something that sounded more normal and part of the jazz vocabulary. So that's a big part of why Monk, to me, was such a huge influence on jazz as a whole. He really developed an entirely new language, and that's something that is so interesting and so cool to me. Now, we're going to keep talking about Monk's melodic improvisation to start out here, but we are going to come back to this tritone idea for an incredibly key piece of this information, which is how he uses it harmonically. So that's coming up later in the video, and that's really, really important to understanding not just Monk's playing, but how jazz developed as a whole. But for now, let's take a look more at his melodic improvisation. So as you know, I really like to break concepts down in a way that is easy to apply. So I've been thinking a lot about how to do that with Monk's melodic improvisation. Now, as I mentioned before, one of the key words I think can be used to describe Monk's playing in general is surprise. He used the element of surprise so frequently that I decided maybe his improvisation style or technique merited having its own name. And so I came up with the name Melodic Glitching. So Monk's playing is really interesting in the sense that he may start a line and finish it in a completely unexpected place. In fact, he may actually start a line and then just jump to another part of the keyboard. Another thing he'll do is throw in these strange clashing intervals in the middle of his playing. I'm about to demonstrate all of this to you. So for me, to take this analogy even further, it's almost like he's this highly complex android who was programmed to play jazz, but then something happened in the programming or the wiring that caused him to actually start glitching out. So he still got all of that, incredible algorithmic knowledge of jazz. So he ends up doing all these kind of surprising, random sounding things that to me almost sound like glitching. And really, they are a very important part of his sound. So let me show you a bunch of melodic glitches that I think he uses that are really, really cool and that you can start using right after you watch this video. So the basic concept is I want you to work on playing a lick, but then fairly frequently, maybe to start out, you could try once every couple bars, do something completely unexpected, something completely nonsensical, and see what happens. So let's just try this. I'm not even going to try to sound like Monk right now. I'm going to sound like me, but then use this concept of melodic glitching. So I was doing things there like jumping octaves suddenly in the middle of a line. I was throwing in little note clusters and clashy dissonant intervals. And already you start to see that, to me, it is like there's some Monk influence coming right out in my playing, right? Just immediately just by applying this concept. And so I think that this concept is something that's really, really cool because frankly, the element of surprise, in my personal opinion, is one of the most fun aspects of music and one of the best things for making your playing and your composition really, really interesting and fun to listen to. I think we actually often get way too caught up in playing what we think we're supposed to play, or even just following the natural patterns that we've developed. So using this concept of melodic glitching can just immediately break you out of those patterns and create completely new, interesting versions of your usual vocabulary. So now let's get a little more specific and look at some of Monk's melodic glitches that he would use. So first of all, let's look at the whole tone scale. He would use the whole tone scale very frequently, and that's kind of funny because the whole tone scale in and of itself sounds a bit strange, right? For those of you that don't know, the whole tone scale is literally a scale built completely on whole tones and whole tones only. So starting in F, whole tone, back to F. That's the scale. Kind of has this strange, outer worldly, dreamy sound. find it very kind of ambiguous, right? It could start or end on any note. The intervals are all just exactly the same. And of course, when you use it on a dominant chord, you get that tritone. So first and foremost, let's just get a little bit better at this scale. One great fingering for it is just going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. On the way down, it's 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, right? Nice and simple. So let's look at one more whole tone based pattern that's really, really useful here to learn. We're going to use our fingers in the order 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 now. And we're going to do this pattern up in whole tones as well, like this. Now there might be a better fingering here for when you get up to these black notes, so let me know if anybody has some recommendations there, but I personally kind of prefer to just keep things exactly the same for the ease of that pattern repeating. On the way down we can do 4, 3, 2, 1. But yeah, it gets a little awkward on these black notes, so again, I'd be very curious to hear what fingering you might use right there. Let me know in the comments. Super quick, if you're getting a lot out of this video so far, please hit that like button. Really helps me and the channel out. Now, one last pattern here that I think is really useful is going to be an interesting descending arpeggio, but we're going to kind of glitch it just a tiny bit and we're going to have some repeated notes. So we're going to actually try to accent those too, so it sounds a little strange. So here we're doing 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we're jumping and repeating that same note with 4, 3, 2, 1. So F, B, F, B, F, we're repeating each of those notes twice. And there you have a few great whole tone patterns to practice and apply right away. Now this next concept is absolutely key, so be sure to pay attention. We're going to talk about how to actually apply this stuff now. So the way Monk often would approach it was he would do a descending arpeggio. So let's take our interesting lick here. And then jump all the way back up. So here I'm doing this little interesting arpeggio. We got the flat 7 and the 1, B flat 7, and then the 3 and the sharp 4 here. So I'm doing on the F chord, the little arpeggio that we practice descending, and then on this B flat chord, I'm actually doing this other cluster arpeggio upwards. And I'm jumping way up to do it, right? So that's our melodic glitch. We're going down here, but then that's leading us nowhere, and we're jumping all the way back up here. Now another interesting concept is to repeat something, but do it in essentially an unpredictable or nonsensical pattern. So instead of just doing, or even, let's repeat this F a random amount of times each time we do this little pattern. So, or another example. All right, so we are glitching out quite a bit here, and I think it's sounding really interesting. Hopefully you're enjoying this concept too. I'm having a lot of fun doing this right now. All right. Keep paying attention. Now, just as a general thought on Monk's improvisational style, his lines very often were arpeggiated. So instead of playing these really intricate chromaticisms all the time, he would really open up his lines and do more of these arpeggiated chords in general. So sometimes that meant the whole tone scale, but sometimes that meant actually arpeggiating chords. So a very common thing he might do is arpeggiate, for example, the dominant 7 chord a tritone away. So we're on F here, F7, so let's arpeggiate B7. So that's a little trick that you can use, and you don't have to do it in the Monk style, right? You can do it in a more modern style, more cleanly, more bebop, however you want to apply it. It's probably going to sound awesome. In fact, here's a quick lick that I like to play. I'll just arpeggiate like this. You've probably heard that before. I'm literally just doing F major, B major, F major, B major, F major. So feel free to try that one out. Now, all of that said, one last very important comment on his melodic playing is that when he did use approach notes and enclosure patterns, by the way, if you don't know what those are, I will link a video right there that explains it, but he would often replace those patterns with the whole tone scale. So he would actually do essentially whole tone approach note patterns. So let's say that he was doing something like this. So right here, we're enclosing this B flat. So he might actually do something more like this. Right? Actually replacing that with whole tones. So I encourage you to work on that. See if you can come up with some other enclosure or approach note patterns that are actually coming from the whole tone scale instead of from the chromatic scale. All right, so let's move on from his melodic playing and let's talk a little bit more about his harmony and chords. So again, tritones play a big role here, but now we're talking in the more chordal sense. So first of all, Monk absolutely favored dominant chords that had tritones in them quite a bit. So just to start out really simple, here's an F7 with a sharp 11, right? F7 sharp 11. So he would also love to add that root on top and maybe even some kind of dissonant clashy note just for the sake of getting that dissonance in there. So I'm actually adding in here the natural 11 in addition to the sharp 11. Now another thing he loved to do is tritone substitutions. So instead of an F chord, an F dominant chord, you might actually get a B dominant chord to replace the F. Or you might get it just to lead us to the B flat. This is a pretty common passing chord pattern, but the way Monk used it was particularly unique, especially for its time. So if we're in an F blues, there's our little tritone sub to get to the B flat. But I think that he liked them so much that he might actually throw in a tritone from the B flat to get back to the F. So, and then Monk also loved to throw in longer substitutions. So we might get something like that, right? So we might actually continue the pattern. So we go F to B7 to B flat 7 to E7 to A7 to D, and then maybe F sharp down to the F, something like that to get us back to the F. In fact, one really great substitution I've heard him do is instead of D minor to G7 to C major 7, right? Our classic 2-5-1. I'll actually start on the E flat 7 here and go. So we're going E flat 7, D to D flat 7 to F sharp 7 to C. So we go from the tritone so either to C7 or C major 7. He would also literally use these tritone harmonies to reharmonize melodies. So for example, his solo piano version of Honeysuckle Rose. So normally we're doing a 2-5 to C, so what Monk does instead is this. And actually this is a great example of the usage of this little tritone reharmonization here that he likes to use. So he does B flat to E flat, but what we're actually trying to do is get from C to F, right? In our original chord changes. So instead, what we do to get here is we go E flat, D, D flat, to C, to F. So he actually changes the melody itself. So again, normally in the melody we have, so he actually changes the melody to fit this B flat minor substitution to E flat. And then we land on the same normal melody note here, but he makes that a tritone. So it's almost like he was like, I don't like that being the 13 of C. Let's see if I can make it the tritone. So that would be an E flat chord. But it doesn't sound that great, C to E flat 7. So let's just make it work with B flat to E flat. And you get this really interesting interesting sound. All right, so just as a summary, if we're breaking down Monk's playing into its simplest melodic and harmonic parts, we've got for melody, we've got the whole tone scale, and we've got the overall concept of melodic glitching. That is to say, breaking up our lines in very unexpected ways. That includes arpeggios and more linear improvisation. From the harmonic standpoint, we have tritone chordal substitutions as well, and following those through the cycle of fifths a little bit as well to make those substitutions longer. Most importantly, we have the element of surprise in general in our improvisation and even our comping. Check out videos of Monk comping behind others, and trust me when I say you will hear the element of surprise. That comes to both his playing and even just his performing in general. And that is all I have for you today, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Again, a shout out to our amazing sponsor, Straight Ahead Samples. They have such awesome libraries that have this unique algorithm that will make your jazz samples sound so much more real. So if you're like me and you like to create jazz in a DAW, highly recommend you check them out. And don't forget that at the very least, you might as well download the Real Piano, the piano sound / plugin that I have been using in this video. Use the link in the description, again, totally free. Might as well get it while supplies last because I know they have a limited amount available of those free downloads. If you got something out of this video and you're new here, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. And either way, if you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. It really, really helps me out. Now, Monk's playing was really, really important to jazz, but there are also other players that we really should understand in order to be the best jazz pianist that we can be. So I'm actually gonna link you to a video about one of those people right here, and I highly recommend you give it a watch. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.